The quintessential novel of the lost generation, The Sun Also Rises is one of Ernest Hemingway's masterpieces and a classic example of his spare but powerful writing style. A poignant look at the disillusionment and angst of the post-World War I generation, the novel introduces two of Hemingway's most unforgettable characters, Jake Barnes and Lady Brett Ashley. The story follows the flamboyant Brett and the hapless Jake as they journey from the wild nightlife of 1920s Paris to the brutal bullfighting rings of Spain with a motley group of expatriates. It is an age of moral bankruptcy, spiritual dissolution, unrealized love, and vanishing illusions. First published in 1926, The Sun Also Rises helped to establish Hemingway as one of the greatest writers of the 20th century. The Sun Also Rises is narrated by Jake Barnes, a World War I veteran and a journalist based in Paris. It opens with Jake providing a biographical description of his friend Robert Cohn, an American expatriate living in Paris with his girlfriend Frances Klein, who is very controlling. Cohn wants to travel to South America with Jake because he is feeling restless, but Jake doesn't want to and instead wants to rid himself of Cohn. Later, Jake finds himself at a nightclub and runs into the love of his life, Lady Brett Ashley, who is a divorced socialite. She met Jake during the war when she treated Jake's wounds. Although Brett loves Jake, we found out in a conversation between the two that Brett cannot commit to Jake, for he is impotent. In the morning while lunching with Cohn, Jake informs Cohn that she is going to marry Mike Campbell, an alcoholic war veteran. Cohn is interested in Brett, which bothers Jake, as is still in love with her. In the evening Brett runs into Jake once more, after standing him up, at his apartment. She is accompanied by the Greek expatriate, Count Mippopoulos. She informs Jake she is going to San Sebastian as she wants to be apart from him. Several weeks later, Jake makes plans with Bill, an American war veteran, to go to Spain to fish and attend the festival in Pamplona called the Fiesta de San Fermín. The Fiesta de San Fermín is a week-long festival in Pamplona full of celebrations. What attracts people most, including the characters in The Sun Also Rises, is the famous bullfighting and bull runs that occur. Around this time, Jake runs into Brett, who has just returned to Paris with her fiancé, Mike. They ask Jake if they can join him in Pamplona, which he agrees to. Brett secretly reveals to Jake that while in San Sebastian she was together with Cohn. Bill, Jake, and Cohn travel together to Pamplona and wait for Brett and Mike. After they fail to show up, Bill and Jake go to Bergijk to fish while Cohn stays behind to wait for Brett. 5 days later, Brett informs Jake she and Mike will be arriving soon, so Jake and Bill return. Once everyone arrives they all go to watch the unloading of the bulls who will be used in the bullfighting. The festival begins and the city plunges into drinking, dancing, and debauchery. Notably, the group of friends watches Pedro Romero, a 19-year-old bullfighter, as he takes on the first bullfight. It is violent, but Brett is enthralled, and later he is introduced to Romero by Jake. While this is happening, Mike fights Cohn. Brett falls in love with Romero and gets Jake's help in finding him for her so she can spend the night with him. Which she does. The fighting between Cohn and Mike continues, with Jake caught in the middle. Cohn also reveals that he beat up Romero when he caught him with Brett. Romero refuses Cohn's apology. Cohn leaves before the bullfight. During the bullfight, Romero kills a bull and offers the ear to Brett, before leaving with her for Madrid. The remaining three stay for the rest of the festival and depart from Spain. They each go their separate ways, and Jake goes to San Sebastian to relax. He receives a telegram from Brett asking to meet her in Madrid. Jake finds her alone in a hotel room. Not wishing to ruin his career, she has broken up with Romero. Jake and Brett go back to Madrid. The story closes with Brett lamenting that Jake and she could have been wonderful together. Her inability to be with someone who is impotent is the reason they could never be together. The novel shows the theme of the power of sexuality through the character of Brett, who loves and commits herself to Jake, yet she cannot stay with him forever because of his impotence. On the other hand, she also cannot marry anybody else as she has committed herself to Jake. Therefore, despite leading a liberal life of having sexual relations with others, her sexuality does not allow her to break her commitment and involve herself with somebody else. The novel, though, does not show scenes from the war, it shows the impacts of the destruction of this madness on men and women alike. Jake, who has participated in the war, has lost his sexual power. That is why his feelings toward others have changed, as he is unable to make love to Brett, whose dissatisfaction leads almost all of them to enjoy life in trivial activities without engaging in real-life struggle. World War I undercut traditional notions of morality, faith, and justice. No longer able to rely on the traditional beliefs that gave life meaning, the men and women who experienced the war became psychologically and morally lost, and they wandered aimlessly in a world that appeared meaningless. Jake, Brett, and their acquaintances give dramatic life to this situation. Because they no longer believe in anything, their lives are empty. They fill their time with inconsequential and escapist activities, such as drinking, dancing, and debauchery. It is important to note that Hemingway never explicitly states that Jake and his friends' lives are aimless, or that this aimlessness is a result of the war. Instead, he implies these ideas through his portrayal of the characters' emotional and mental lives. These stand in stark contrast to the characters' surface actions. Jake and his friends' constant carousing does not make them happy. Very often, their merrymaking is joyless and driven by alcohol. At best, it allows them not to think about their inner lives or about the war. Although they spend nearly all of their time partying in one way or another, they remain sorrowful or unfulfilled. Hence, their drinking and dancing is just a futile distraction, a purposeless activity characteristic of a wandering, aimless life. The social scene in The Sun Also Rises takes place mostly in bars, cafes, and restaurants. Between the meals and drinks are journeys along Parisian streets and across the square in Pamplona. For most of the novel, there is a noticeable lack of natural landscape. The action is urban and repetitive. There are descriptions of drinking and dialogue instead of the sky or the weather. There is also a sense that since the war, civilization has been moving away from nature and from natural experiences. The characters are dissatisfied with city life and suggest trip after trip to try to find satisfaction, but these urban rituals keep repeating themselves, until Jake's brief excursions into nature, which give momentary peace and escape. There are several of these excursions, including the bullfight, with its display of the violence of nature, and Jake's trip to the sea, where he steps out into the water and finds simple pleasure in being able to see only the sky around him. Then there is also the fishing trip that Jake takes with Bill, which Hemingway describes in language that lacks the undercurrents of emptiness and dissatisfaction present in the city scenes. "This is country," says Bill as they arrive in the beautiful area they have chosen for their fishing. Both men feel that the natural landscape has something real and essential in it that the town does not have. The Sun Also Rises is replete with great characters, the kind that come to life on the page and make one believe in the lives they are living. And the greatness of the novel is in these characters and the relations between them, which are compelling. This is what makes any great novel rich. So, this novel is more than a period piece. It is almost as sempiternal as The Rising of the Sun.